Is everybody ready? John Kaner is our timekeeper, so he'll be giving cues to the candidates. So Adina, with that, your microphone's in front of you. Thank you.
4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Adina Ishii, and I'm a candidate for Berkeley Mayor. I'm very pleased to be here with you this evening. I am a graduate from UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business. My husband, who's sitting here in the audience, is an entrepreneur and had a Berkeley business for 10 years. And I'm also involved with the Lauren Business Association. First, I just want to check in with the audience. How many of you represent a Berkeley business this evening? Okay. Almost half of you. That's wonderful. Thanks for joining us this evening, and to all of you that are also not Berkeley business owners. I want to start by sharing an experience that I had in Berkeley. My husband and I have date night every Friday, and I think this is a situation that is quite common, unfortunately, in our city. We were walking through downtown Berkeley, and it was a very cold night. There was a man who appeared to be unhoused. He was half naked and screaming at people who were walking by. I think that this was a really sad situation, and as someone who knows the specialized care unit only operates between the hours of 6 a.m. and 4 p.m., I knew that there was nobody that I could really call. He wasn't committing a crime, I wasn't going to call the police, and there wasn't really that much we could do in the moment to help him or to do something about that. I think that this situation really speaks to a lot of what folks have been experiencing, and I think something that local businesses here feel is a challenge. This has really kind of led me to 3 things that I really would like to accomplish as mayor of Berkeley. 1 is to create a more local business-friendly environment. 2, to remove bureaucratic obstacles. And 3, to increase public safety. Over the past 10 months, I've been very lucky to interact with both Visit Berkeley, the Office of Economic Development, all of the Downtown Berkeley Business Association, many different business associations, and the Chamber of Commerce. And it's been really impressive to watch how they work together and interact and try to build a more Berkeley-friendly, a business-friendly Berkeley. I really appreciate the work that they're doing. I've also gotten to speak to many local business owners and held what we're calling Voices of Berkeley, a listening session specifically for small business owners. We're also going to hold Voices of Berkeley listening sessions for other populations in the city of Berkeley and throughout the different districts. I'd like to step back a little bit and tell you a bit about why I'm running and a little more about my story. I'm originally from Southern California. I moved up to Berkeley 15 years ago. I was a student at Berkeley City College where I was working 3 jobs in order to support myself. I'm someone who's experienced housing insecurity and food insecurity, and so I really understand those struggles that we have here in Berkeley. I was able to transfer over to UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business, as I mentioned, and I've been very involved in making Berkeley my home. My husband and I own a home in South Berkeley with our daughter and our 2 dogs. I've been involved in local politics through the League of Women Voters. This organization is nonpartisan and political and has been around for over 100 years. I was actually elected to be the first woman of color. In 107 years, they had not had a woman of color be president of that organization. I really learned in the League of Women Voters the importance of respect and having conversations across differences, and that's something that really guides me and my values. We need to really fight for what we believe in here in Berkeley, and I think that's so important. And at the same time, we need to be able to work together and come together across differences so that we can actually get some things done. I'm focused on housing and homelessness, public safety, education, and aging. I look forward to hearing your questions this evening and getting to know all of you. I am endorsed by Councilmember Terry Taplin, who's here, School Board Director Khadijah Brown, City Planning Commissioner Alfred Tu, and many more folks in the city of Berkeley. And if you'd like to read more, you can go to adinaishii.com. That's ADENAISHII.com. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hahn, you're up.
Thank you so much. Working, huh? Well, Berkeley is more than just a great place to live for me. It's really who I am and what I stand for. I grew up in Berkeley and have raised my own family just blocks from my childhood home. My parents moved here to embrace civil rights, and as a child, I attended one of Berkeley's first integrated schools. From my father's shoulders, I watched free speech and anti-war protests, and my family embraced recycling, natural food, and Earth Day, at that time all newfangled ideas. Truly inspired by the sense of possibility that electrified our community, I learned early on that freedom, equality, and justice are hard fought, and that the things we do in Berkeley really matter. From grade school to the city council, I have been working to make Berkeley a stronger, safer, and more equitable place for all of us, and to express these values in everything that we do. I believe in the intrinsic value of every human being and that everyone is worthy of dignity, respect, and a safe, meaningful, and comfortable life. I'm running to be Berkeley's next mayor because that is how I can have the greatest positive impact on the people, places, and planet that I care about so deeply. I also believe in the unique power of government to create and protect the common good, and that individual success, business or personal, is always grounded in public investments. I thrive on doing good things for Berkeley, and I am eager to be your next mayor. Many of you know that I'm a proud graduate of both Berkeley High and UC Berkeley. I also earned a law degree and practiced business law for several years. What you may not know is that I have started, grown, and sold a small manufacturing and wholesale business myself, so I actually have firsthand experience of both joys and the challenges of small business. That's why I've been so proactive, meeting the needs of our business community during my time on the City Council, and why I'll be a strong partner for you as Berkeley's next mayor. Much of what makes Berkeley a unique and worthwhile community is the character of our local arts, nonprofits, and businesses. But the days when you could open a storefront and feed a family on the income are long gone. If we want to remain a truly unique and worthwhile community and resist the bland uniformity of many American towns, we have to do more to support our business community. I am eager to explore this as we answer your questions this evening. But up front, I want to say that I believe private investment follows public investment. And as your mayor, I plan to continue to invest in you. After decades of service to our schools, libraries, and community, it was the honor of my life to be elected to the City Council in 2016. While celebrating that victory, we learned that Trump had been elected, and the music stopped. I stepped into office knowing that Berkeley would experience challenging times, but I could not have imagined what was to follow. Proud Boys marauding in Civic Center Park, red skies choked with smoke, and the many shocks we all experienced during the pandemic. It has been a lot for everyone. But rather than wear me down, serving this community energizes me. We can't fix all the problems of the world, but we can make things better here. And I will never, ever give up on Berkeley. With more challenges on the horizon, Berkeley needs a mayor they can count on. And I'm here to tell you, loud and clear, that you can count on me.
Thank you. All right, we're just going to let a few newcomers into the room as we pivot over to Ms. Harrison. Take it away whenever you're ready.
All right. Should I let people sit down first? I think I'll do that. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, good evening. I'm really pleased to have been invited to this forum early on in the election cycle for the mayor's race. We have many important elections before this. As the only candidate here who has managed a $1 billion budget for the state of California, and after being on the council for 7 years, I've come to the same conclusion that many in the business community and our residents have. City Hall needs reform. Many of our most competent staff agree. They are leaving in droves. We are losing the means to find practical solutions for the majority of Berkeleyans. I am, however, proud of what I've been able to accomplish for the downtown by abandoning the lens of conservative versus liberal and approaching issues through the vantage point of what works. John Kaner will attest, he often told me, that I am usually the first and sometimes the only person on council to call and respond when problems arise. Our joint efforts, for example, created a compassionate approach to homelessness that reduced unhoused homelessness in the downtown by 2/3. I will extend this success to the rest of the city. My innovative program to use a vacant warehouse on Grayson Street as a homeless shelter successfully brought 100 people and 40 RVs off the streets for less cost than other shelters. The downtown street team, providing meaning and work to homeless people, started here with an initiative from my office and the DBA. On crime, I sponsored reinstituting the bike patrol in downtown to bring the police closer to our business community. I have put forward funding for beautifying the downtown and making Herald Way a destination, and advocated with you for things from trash corrals to restaurant seating. My support for information kiosks in the downtown, not shared by my colleague on the stage tonight, was pivotal in getting those adopted. My concerns are not left versus right, homeowner versus tenant, YIMBY versus NIMBY, as much as I hate those terms. My concerns are management concerns. About homelessness, I do not accept the defeatism that says we can't do anything because of the Boise decision, which leaves our parks and business districts suffering and mentally ill people on the streets. The very expensive purchase of motels reduces our hotel tax revenues and limits visitors to Berkeley. We can be compassionate and be a city that works in a cost-effective way. We can do better. 4 years ago, we proposed a framework to have police focus on fighting crime with duties best performed by others assigned to those others, including quieting loud frat parties and towing cars. Yet I hear from you almost daily as a business community that you are not getting the needed police response, something I experienced myself just this week when I was at a restaurant in District 5 that blocks away from my house that had been broken into. 5 hours after they called the police, there was still no response, and they could not serve people. I called the deputy city manager, and I was pleased that she was able to help, and the police did arrive 20 minutes after that. But it shouldn't be this hard to get a police response to a burglarized storefront. It shouldn't, at the same time, an intoxicated person on my block was being helped by numerous police without the special care unit in evidence, and this is in the daytime. I think you'll agree we can all do better. We are building a lot of new housing, which is a good, but otherwise not creating a vibrant and livable downtown because, in my view, of a lack of planning. The DBA has filled that role, that void, but I believe the city needs to take on a larger role in planning for our future. This does not mean we need to leave things exactly as they are. It means we need to plan for a better future. The results of not doing so are all around us. The eyesore of boarded up buildings, rising rents, and a lack of affordable housing and business rents that squeeze out our neighbors. We must do better. I think my opponent from the city council has defended the status quo, saying she doesn't know what I mean when I say processes are broken, but I think many of you in this room do. I am a progressive who gets things done, but I want you to forget the progressive part for right now and focus on the get things done. City Hall is not getting things done for many of us. Do you want to stick with the status quo, or do you want a mayor who rallies the community and takes action? Thank you for your interest tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to dive right in. We're going to get through as many pre-prepared questions as we can, and then we'll pivot over to audience questions. Okay, so since Adina kicked things off, Sophie, you'll answer the question first, and then we'll go to Kate and Adina. We hear from our businesses frequently about disturbing incidents their employees and patrons face, from human waste and drug paraphernalia at their doors to assaults, stalking, vandalism, and theft. What would you say to those folks who no longer feel safe working in Berkeley? You each have 2 minutes, and John will give you a 30-second warning.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that it is absolutely unacceptable. It is, nobody should feel in danger in their workplace, and nobody should have to deal with the kind of dirt and challenges that people are experiencing in shops and in our commercial districts throughout the city. So that's the first thing I have to say, is that I don't accept it. It's not acceptable. But then what can we do, right? Because that's really the question. And I have thought a lot about how we can reform our policing. And what we really need to do is focus our police on the things that they are best at, which is addressing violent and serious crimes. And then we need to deploy a lot of other people who help with public safety in other ways. If you have a mental health crisis, we're sending a mental health professional. We just started that. It's only 8 hours a day. That needs to be 24 hours a day. If you have a break-in and there's no threat or violence, then somebody still needs to show up. And so we need to have other folks who can come and take your report and take the pictures and open an investigation. We need to focus on closing crimes. A small number of people commit a large number of offenses. And so we need to significantly increase our investigatory capacity. We need to increase our partnership with businesses so that they have private surveillance cameras that the police can access so that they can solve those crimes. That is a way to preserve civil liberties by not having as much government surveillance, but still having the opportunity to view surveillance camera footage when a crime is up. There are many other things that we can do, and I look forward to talking more about that with you, but it is an area that I think is in need of urgent action. Thank you.
Kate, if you'd like me to repeat the question, let me know.
Yes, would you? Thank you.
Sure. We hear from our businesses frequently about disturbing incidents their employees and patrons face, from human waste and drug paraphernalia at their doors to assaults, stalking, vandalism, and theft. What would you say to those folks who no longer feel safe working in Berkeley?
The incidents that we see in the downtown have been reduced in some ways, but become more intense in others. What we have left, we've done a good job of housing people, but the people left are often suffering serious mental health crises, and it's not an easy thing to resolve. It's incredibly hard, though, as a business person in Berkeley, to know what to do. For example, in this incident near my house, there's not a number that when you call dispatch, you don't get dispatched to the SCU. You have to know. Virginia Cleaners had to know they were supposed to call the SCU. How would they know to do that? Our information to the business community is lacking. How do we know that when a business is told, we don't have anyone to send, you'll need to make a citizen's arrest, what that really means? How do we know that we're not finding that people are being told we cannot do anything about a person who is lying in front of the B of A in District 5 for months and months on end, surrounded by, unfortunately, bodily fluids, and we're told we can't do anything because of the Boise decision. I don't accept that. Other cities do not accept that, and I think that we have fallen into the trap of being more worried about litigation than about taking care of our city. So I think we need to review these decisions. They're coming before the Supreme Court soon, and we need to take a much more proactive approach. I just don't accept when a woman at Bart Plaza continually breaks into the ice cream store, steals their tips, scares their employees, that we just say, well, there's nothing we can do. And that is often the answer that we receive when we call the city. This is one of the ways that I think the city needs to be reformed. I also do agree with the issue of investigations. This is one of the weakest points of our police department. We have excellent officers on the street, but we need to strengthen our investigatory capability. We need to do things like I did this year of etching VIN numbers on catalytic converters and chasing down the places that are buying them when they're stolen so that we know who's committing these theft rings, who's causing these theft rings. We need that further end of policing that's not just, we're lucky there was a cop standing there when that happened, but the person that can actually go find out what's going on and to bring results to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Adina, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, it's okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
The floor is yours.
Yeah. So I want to start by saying, if someone came to me and said, these are the things that I've been experiencing, I've just kind of given up. I would say first, I can understand that. I think that it's been very hard. As someone who is frequently in the business districts, talking to business owners, patronizing these shops, I understand that it's really tough. And I think it's also important to kind of acknowledge this kind of pattern that I've been seeing recently of victim blaming, of like, well, then maybe you shouldn't have cash for your tips, or, maybe you should have just been, better about locking up your shop. You should have more bars on your windows. And I don't really feel like that's a fair argument to be making. I want to share a little bit about my experience in this area. I've worked for the Alameda County District Attorney's Office and also the Contra Costa District Attorney's Office. In Alameda County, I was in the Human Trafficking Unit, and in Contra Costa, I was focused on misdemeanors. And I'll tell you that it's a really complicated situation, because I think that, as we've said already, a lot of these folks are not committing crimes besides maybe vandalism, and I think that we need to pay attention to that. I want to also say that Berkeley Police Department is understaffed. I've done a ride-along with the police to see what it's like at nighttime, and I've heard from them about how they're understaffed both in terms of officers and in terms of dispatch. And I've gone and actually visited dispatch and seen what that it looks like in there, and they're working constantly. They're having to sit for many, many hours on hand, work sometimes 10, 12-hour shifts, and that's not right. We need to make sure that we fully staff BPD. Increase the hours of specialized care units, as I've said before in other spaces. Mental health crises don't just happen between the hours of 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. Downtown Streets team has been doing a good job in downtown Berkeley, and I know that they're expanding to other districts as well. That's very exciting, especially for me as a South Berkeley resident. I oftentimes feel that in South and West Berkeley, our people are ignored. And I think that we need to make sure we're sharing information and resources and collaborate more with the business districts and the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to pivot. If anyone would like to rebut, feel free during your time. This next question, we're going to start with Kate. Kate, if elected, what is your plan to fill citywide retail vacancies and revitalize our commercial districts?
I'm really glad you asked that, because it's part and parcel of the previous question. The vacancies that we see in our storefronts are leading to an attractive nuisance. When we have buildings that are going to be developed and they're closing the retail on the ground floor, what we often see is boarded up stores waiting for this project to go ahead, the development of homelessness and drug dealing in front of them, and we need to tackle that directly. We need to save the businesses that are there now. If a developer comes and says, I want to develop this building, but right now the missing link is there, I don't want to find out next week the missing link had to leave. What I want is a plan to say, how do we save the missing link until this project moves forward? What do we do to help relocate the missing link? What do we do, like John and I have proposed, to create window designs that are attractive and get rid of the boarded up buildings? How do we deal with the blatant drug dealing that's going on in front of these stores? Because once this starts, it grows. It becomes an attractive nuisance. It's very hard to combat. So we've got to look at the environmental elements of this, and I would just say I really think we need to focus on the building permit process that allows people to hold on to building sites, having closed the retail there for years on end with no development having happened. There's one on University in Shattuck. It had entitlement for 18 years before it started building. Our planning department does not have to allow that. Our code calls for the cancellation of entitlement after 2 years. I think we should be doing that. If you're serious about building housing, we love it. Bring it on. If you're just going to sit on it and create a nuisance, we're going to cancel your permit. So I think that is one of the most important things we can be doing, as well as just small business support, the damage fund that John and the mayor and I worked on during COVID. All of the types of activities that we do to support small businesses downtown are really critical. I don't want to end up in a city that's all chain stores and housing. I didn't move to Berkeley to live in a suburb with apartments. Thank you.
Adina, same question.
Yeah, so in terms of revitalizing the commercial districts, I think, as Kate said, it's very important that we support the businesses that are there already. We also need to create more opportunities for growth. I think that's a main thing, is like we're talking about bringing more businesses in. As someone who's been interacting with small business owners, as I mentioned, I hear a lot about the bureaucracy that goes on and how difficult it is to start your business, the permitting process, et cetera. Also zoning, looking at zoning. And I know the Office of Economic Development is doing an excellent job. I think that there are a lot of things that I can talk about in terms of, how we can be more thoughtful about what we're doing in the city. And also, I want to acknowledge that there's already a lot of really great work being done through the business districts, through the Chamber of Commerce, through the Office of Economic Development, through Visit Berkeley. And I think we also, as a city, need to support those efforts that are already happening. I think sometimes we like to recreate the wheel, but actually, if we have something that's doing well, we need to be supporting those processes. I also wanted to talk about how we can have more things like events. There has been a Northwest Berkeley First Friday that's been very successful through Hammerling Wines, and there are events like that that we could be supporting. And also housing. I mean, I think that if we have more folks, for instance, in downtown, there are a lot of businesses who feel like that will bring more life to this area. And I know also there are access issues, so making sure that different business districts who don't necessarily have space for more housing, that people are able to access it through public transportation, through bikes, and that we have safe streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat the question, Sophie?
I think I've got it. Thank you very much. So, yes, first of all, one of the top things I want to do as mayor is to focus on revitalizing our business districts with public investments in the public realm. As I said in my opening, I believe private investment follows public investment. If you look at Solano Avenue in Albany, 15 years ago or so, they did a pretty standard redo of their sidewalks, bulb outs, shortened crossings, put some street furniture out. They built a very nice parklet. And within 10 years, every storefront had been refurbished and every storefront was full. And Albany, California, Solano is hopping. It really shows the power of public investment to support business. So I would like, first and foremost, for our city to invest in the public realm. That is good for business. It's also good for safety. The best way to be safe is to have a lot of people there, to have a thriving and bustling communal space that is occupied by people who are shopping, but also in lounging, enjoying, maybe they're playing chess, and who are out strolling in the public realm. It's also builds community and connections, which is something that I think is incredibly important. Second, I would like us to waive fees and taxes during the first year so that small businesses can get a foothold and establish themselves. I want us to look at incentives and possible subsidies for rents in the first year. It is very hard to get a business off the ground, and we need to help, in particular, women and minority and veteran-owned businesses. I'd like to see what we can do to help them establish and survive. And then I also would like us to require new buildings to provide discounted commercial space for the arts and local businesses as a community benefit, as another way for us to support small and local businesses and help them thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, pivoting over to city government and staffing. Adina, the question will be yours first. What is your plan, if elected, for rebuilding and maintaining the Berkeley police force, both officers and administrative roles?
Yeah, this is a great question. Thank you. I think that a big thing is that we have a lot of mistrust still between the police department and the people of Berkeley. I think that we have this thing called Coffee with a Cop, and I think that that's important. And we have a liaison program, but I also know that there are a lot of folks who've not been able to access those opportunities. I think a big piece of this is making sure that we rebuild our trust with the police department. Having spoken to police officers, I know that they oftentimes don't feel appreciated. And I think that at the same time, we also need to be careful and make sure we're thoughtful about how we're supporting our police officers, because I know people, especially people of color, sometimes don't feel as comfortable interacting with police. I think that there are a lot of opportunities that we can do to recruit officers. I think recruitment and retention are usually the two things that I'm focused on. And I think when we're recruiting officers and even staff folks as well, we want to be really thoughtful about who we're hiring so that they represent the values of people here in Berkeley. One thing that I learned is that usually the Berkeley Police Department hires folks who are a little bit older and have a little bit more life experience and context. And I think that's very important because it gives them a wider view of how to interact with the community. While I was doing my ride along, I got a chance to witness an officer who got called because there was a young boy who was basically arguing with his mother. And that's not a call that the police should have had to take. There should have been opportunities to have someone else go out, more like a social worker who would be connecting with that family and supporting them, so that, number one, we didn't have to have 4 police officers there and take time away, and also so that we can make sure that that family is supported. I think there are many opportunities here to be compassionate in the way that we deal with public safety, and I think the police do need to feel appreciated. Thank you.
Sophie, the floor is yours.
Would you like me to repeat?
I know, I've got it. Thank you. And thanks for remembering the order. So our police are extremely important to the community, and public safety is important as well. But public safety does not always equal policing. And we need to have a much broader idea of how we address the many different emergencies that exist and come up in our community. I like to analogize this to a hospital. Hospitals have heart surgeons, they have nurses with like 70 or 80 different specialties, they have physician's assistants, they have triage people, they have people who help with records. They have this huge ecosystem of people who respond to acute situations and emergencies. You do not send the heart surgeon to put a Band-Aid on someone's finger that got cut. And what's happened with policing is that we have asked our police to do everything. We've asked them to do heart surgery, and we've asked them to put on Band-Aids. Now, it turns out that having your bike stolen or a flower pot taken from your porch is way more common than experiencing a violent crime, thank goodness, right? And so our police, who are highly trained, very important, we need them. I believe in rule of law. You cannot have that without a well-trained, well-supported police force. But obviously, they're going to be going first to deal with the real emergencies and the really dangerous things. Meanwhile, all these other people who have less acute, but certainly valid and important issues, they don't get any service at all. So how do we support our police? I think we need to support them by diversifying the response capabilities, empowering them to do what they're best at, remunerating them well, respecting the important role they play, but also seeking ways to increase the amount of response and safety that we deliver through other modalities.
Thank you.
Kate, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, but thank you very much,
welcome.
Beth. Okay. First of all, I want to state emphatically to everyone in the room and the audience that the number of police officers in Berkeley has not been cut. What we have is a recruitment and retention problem, for which the council has responded appropriately. We introduced last year a thing called KIND, which is a training module that says if you take the kind of training that meets our community needs for de-escalation, et cetera, you will receive more compensation. We introduced bonuses, retention and hiring bonuses for anyone that helps us hire a police officer. We've done a number of things to increase the force, and it is going up. But I do have to say, in terms of this issue of community relations with the police. I come from the criminal justice system. That is my background. I worked for 40 years in the court system. And what is needed desperately is for us to honor what we passed when we created the Police Accountability Board. We need, the way we're going to get the community to feel safe with the police and to feel like they want to call them when something happens is to have a good police accountability system. That system has been forestalled through actions in our city management, which I will not go into at length, but I feel very strongly that we have missed the boat here. 4 years ago, we passed the George Floyd Act and said we were going to be doing all the things the other people here are saying we should be doing. And yet to date, what have we done? We've hired high-level administrators, we paid millions of dollars to consultants, and we have not done a single thing about, for example, the suggestion of the Commission on the Status of Women to hire escorts to escort people from BART to their cars. So we're not doing the things that are the low-level things we could be doing right now. We did not hire community service officers outside the department, as we said we would. We did not hire hearing officers so that low-income people are not sent into penury for simple violations, which could be dealt with community service. We have not done a lot of the things we said we would do. So I feel strongly that we need to support our police department, we need to support these alternatives, but we have to get back on track with what we promised the public in 2020. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to pivot again and go over to some regulatory issues. Sophie, you'll kick us off. Whether you believe them or not, policies like the Fair Workweek Ordinance, Hard Hats Ordinance, and the recently overturned natural gas ban have significantly impacted Berkeley-based businesses and the development community. If elected, will you commit to engaging and listening to impacted stakeholders prior to passing future ordinances?
Well, that one's easy because I do it. So I was chair of the committee, that heard the Fair Workweek and went out of our way to reach out to the business community and consult with them to bring them in, made sure that we held hearings on numerous occasions, worked very carefully to make sure that the letters that we received and that the concerns that we heard from the business community were heard and they were incorporated into it. And so, yes, absolutely. I also introduced legislation for our committee to regularly hold listening sessions with our business community, because we do not actually have a commission, which would be community members. We don't have a commission in Berkeley for small business or business, so our council committee is now required to hold listening sessions so that the council is actually hearing regularly from the business community. I also held listening sessions as vice mayor during the pandemic. Many of you will remember that I actually held, 10 or 12 listening sessions with staff to meet with different sectors who were experiencing stress during the pandemic so that we could directly address their needs. I wrote the outdoor dining item so that we could quickly pivot to outdoor dining. I wrote the legislation to extend the ability to have that outdoor space for a year at no cost after the end of the pandemic. I have spent a huge amount of time trying to listen to the business community. I have strong relationships with the bids in my district and work very closely with them. So yes, the business community, all doors open from my administration.
Thank you.
Kate?
Yeah, I actually want to thank Councilmember Hahn, as she was the chair of the committee that looked at the Fair Work Week. And I appreciate the amount of time that we spent to get that passed. We spent a great deal of time, but there's always going to be a problem in legislation. We will always need to make changes. And what I find is missing in our system is the opportunity for businesses to say, we've tried this out, and these are the things that we're seeing that aren't working for us. So in the case of Fair Work Week, for example, when it was passed, this is my legislation, we gave a year lead time to the city manager's office to give out regulations and meet with the business community. And that was in November of 22. It was in December of 23 that she sent notices to the businesses explaining this ordinance. And of course, we got calls because people, once they saw what it looked like, there were some concerns. For example, there's a 24-hour bakery operation, and they are very different than what we meant by manufacturing because they produce a good that can go bad very quickly. So they have unique needs. We need a system that identifies those needs, not just while we're writing the legislation, but gives us this lead time, which I purposely built in, and requires the city management and the rest of us to listen to people and say, let's go back and fix that. I don't have any problem with going back and fixing, because we're going to find when we implement things that there are problems. I also feel that sometimes there is too much of a rush in the council to get legislation passed, that there's a sort of sense of, well, I need to get this through so I will look like I'm doing something. And we do need to slow it down. I think in general, I would like to see us go back to our committee structure for the council, which allowed a lot of really thorough discussion of ideas. Sometimes Councilmember Robinson brought an idea to allow bicycles on the sidewalk, and that failed in my committee. But then he brought an idea to encourage neighborhood commercial retail, and that item was improved in the committee process and passed. Without this committee structure, we're having items go directly to the council, and they're getting pushed through or defeated without enough discussion. So I want us all to slow down, and I want us all to consider the implications of what we do, and we do that through a really good legislative process. Thank you.
Thank you. Adina?
Thank you. Yeah, I think that something I see often in Berkeley is the same people in every single space. And that's lovely. I love to see all of you. I see so many of you many, many times, and that's great. But I think that says something about our outreach in the community. I think it says something about how we're not reaching all of the different people and those who are going to be impacted by what we're doing as a city council. Well, not yet, but. And, I think that we really need to have ongoing, deep, constant engagement. I think that sometimes it can be a little bit scary because sometimes, people are unhappy with those decisions, but we need to have those people who disagree at the table so that we can actually hear from them and make those changes before we implement anything happening. And this is, I think, something that's very important in the city, that we oftentimes see the same folks that are engaged. And that oftentimes also, those people who are not engaged are oftentimes people who can't be because they're working, because they're running their businesses that they have to be at probably most of the time, that they have families, that they have children they need to take care of. And so we need to make sure that the different ways that we interact with the public, it's broad, not just having folks come to different meetings in person, opportunities provided, via video like we're doing right here, which I know the city does do, but also specific outreach. I've actually been going and walking around the business districts and talking to people directly, and I think that direct outreach is necessary. I think it happened during the pandemic. A lot of folks felt uncomfortable going back out there and talking to people, but I think that we need to do that more. And I'm very grateful. I know the Office of Economic Development is out there a lot, so kudos to them for being out there. And as always, I keep saying this, but we need to interact more with the systems that already exist, like the business districts, the Office of Economic Development, Visit Berkeley, Chamber of Commerce. They interact directly with businesses, and we need to make use of that communication system to make sure that we're hearing feedback and getting constant information.
Okay, pivoting back over to public safety. Kate, this will be your question first. Staffing BPD is only one part of addressing public safety needs. If elected, what other measures and resources will you implement to combat behavioral issues and/or violent crimes in our high-traffic commercial districts.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, I did vote originally for the automatic license plate readers, the experiment that we were doing this year. We had a pilot that passed after we had gone to our really excellent Police Accountability Board. I think Councilmember Hahn voted no on that or abstained. I want to see how effective those cameras are. My worry with cameras is if I'm on a corner, it might capture something, but it doesn't capture it down the block. Really, nothing replaces having a vital street life and a strong police department. When we look at traffic, for example, I'm not in favor of all the aspects of BurkDOT that talk about taking the police out of traffic enforcement. Some of these traffic incidents are highly dangerous, people are speeding, and they're indicative of another crime that has happened. If somebody is going 100 miles an hour, that means they've been doing something probably. So I do not like the direction that we partly started to take of saying the police would be out of traffic. I don't think that's appropriate, and it makes me nervous. So I want to make sure we get away from that. I'm really interested in the private camera pilot program that Councilmember Hahn mentioned, and I'm also interested in this physical presence of these escorts. The DBA has proposed an escort program. Nothing as a woman would make me feel safer than being walked to my car. That would be the best safety thing I could have. But we can't afford to have police do that because they're very expensive. They're our most important resource. So we need to look to other people and other ways of doing these kinds of things. We also need neighborhoods that are engaged. If we have empty storefronts, if we have people not out on the street, if we don't have events, that's a time when crime is going to happen. So I see it in a broader aspect. I don't think that just having cameras is the answer. It's a technological solution that doesn't fill the human need that's really causing crime and not helping us prevent it. Thank you.
Question, please.
Yes. Staffing BPD is only one part of addressing public safety needs. If elected, what other measures and resources will you implement to combat behavioral issues and/or violent crimes in our high-traffic commercial districts?
Thank you. I've talked about this before, but I think mental health is a huge piece of this. I keep saying it, but I'm going to say it again. Specialized care unit. Mental health crises don't just happen between the hours of 6 a.m. and 4 p.m. We need to make sure that that is available 24/7 and that is fully staffed. That is a major issue for me. I think that public safety is so much more broad than just police, as you just said. Safe streets is a big part of it, making sure we have safe, sidewalks, bike lanes, etc. I also think that looking at violence prevention, we have ceasefire. We've talked about a little bit about the Reimagining Public Safety Plan. I think that that is a good plan. I think that staff has put a lot of work into making that happen, and I think that we need to support that. I'm also interested in looking at things like programming for youth. I've heard from many different community leaders, from churches, from folks who work with students, that there are not enough activities for youth to do. And honestly, as someone who was not too long ago a high school student, I think that it's important that you give people something to do, because sometimes when you've got nothing to do, you can get into trouble. So I think that that's something we need to be considering and really looking at how we can feel safe in a very broad way. Thank you.
I am very proud to be the strongest person on our city council in preserving civil liberties in Berkeley. I do not believe that civil liberties and safety cannot coexist. And I will not vote in favor of government surveillance, that is, excessive cameras deployed by our city, when the back-end policies are not worth the paper they're written on. We have other ways. We can help our businesses and private citizens place cameras that can be viewed by police when a crime has been committed. But deploying cameras across the city willy-nilly with very, very poor policies at the back end isn't the way to do it. I will vote for them in a carefully deployed manner when our policies are up to snuff. And I am now working with professors at UC Berkeley to work on those policies so that I can have the comfort that you will have the safety to be able to vote yes on these types of deployments. I am the great-granddaughter of people who were arrested and put in boxcars and sent to concentration camps, not by Nazis, by the Parisian gendarme, by the police. I am very, very concerned that when you have totalitarian governments, which we may have in Berkeley, we may have in this country, sooner than we would like to imagine, we need to be extremely vigilant. We can still have safety. We can still do a lot. Support our police in recruiting and retaining officers. Quickly deploy all our alternative response capabilities. Improve our dispatch system. Continue to manage our streets to avoid buildups of debris. Accelerate efforts to get people off the streets. Use technology while safeguarding civil liberties. Incentivize private individuals to deploy cameras. Increase our investigatory capacities. Improve mental health. Remove guns from our streets. And publicize our success in closing crimes so criminals know that if you come to Berkeley, you are not going to be able to commit crimes. And we can do all that without compromising civil liberties.
I think you made it.
Sure. Did you want to add anything, Katie?
Yeah, I would. Actually, I'm surprised to hear Councilmember Hahn say that the policies were not strong as passed by the PAB, as she was my co-author for the surveillance policies that we did pass when we passed ALPR. So if you weren't satisfied then, I don't know why you co-sponsored that. I think our policies are strong as originally passed. I think what's happened recently because of concern about crime, which is completely justified, there's been some shortcuts to try to add cameras without those protections. And in that regard, I support what you're saying. I work closely with the Berkeley Police Department and Lieutenant Ledoux, who's now left, who was the head of the union, on the policies that we passed for surveillance cameras. And I felt satisfied that the policies were strong and protected people's civil liberties. So I stand by that decision. It's not probably usual for someone considered progressive like me to support that, but I think we need to use all the tools we have. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, we're pivoting a little bit here. Let's see, this one's going to Adina first. If elected, what would you do to make or continue doing business more equitable, inclusive, and simple in Berkeley?
Sorry, the last one. Equitable, inclusive.
And simple.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that that's very important. I think, we do need to make things simpler. And as I mentioned in the ideas that I have, one of those things is to remove bureaucratic obstacles. But I will say that the Office of Economic Development is working on that process right now by simplifying the permit system. I've spoken to many folks who are vendors, even through the Ecology Center, who does our farmers markets, that it's very complicated to just be a vendor at the farmers market. We should really encourage our farmers markets and support them by making that process easier. I think there are also, I've heard from Hammerling Wines, the owner of Hammerling Wines, that they are doing this First Friday that I mentioned earlier, which you all should check out. And they also mentioned that it was very challenging for vendors. So this is something that I think is important. In terms of being equitable and inclusive, just to give a little bit of my background, first of all, let me say I'm the only woman of color, the only person of color who's running in this race, and I think that's important to call out. I have done work in diversity, equity, inclusion through the League of Women Voters. I was the chair of our DEI, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion committee for the statewide League of Women Voters. I've spent a lot of my time thinking about, how we are supporting or not supporting business owners, especially business owners of color. A friend of mine owns Baobab, the Bay Area organization of Black-owned businesses, and I think that her work is incredibly important, and we should be supporting the work that she's doing. Oftentimes, folks who are entrepreneurs are people of color, and they're oftentimes, not given the same opportunities in terms of funding, in terms of support, and just generally, I think that we can do more to support our businesses of color. I think that equity is important in terms of the resources that we're giving, and inclusion, I always like to say, diversity is, inviting someone to the party, and inclusivity is asking them to dance. That's something I learned from someone, and I think that it's great if we have these businesses, but we actually need to include them in the things that are happening already here in the city. Thanks.
Thank you.
Sophie, same question.
Well, thank you. A couple months after I was elected in 2016, I actually put forward the most impactful pro-business item that has ever been put forward in the city of Berkeley, and it has resulted in transformation of our economic development department into a department that is focused on meeting the needs of our many, many, many small businesses in Berkeley. 97% of businesses in Berkeley have 50 or fewer employees. We are a city of small businesses. I'm really glad to hear that Ms. Ishii likes the work that our Economic Development Department is doing directly in response to my item. This item asks for 8 things: a program to provide financial and other forms of support to small, locally owned businesses and not-for-profits, a program to reach out to, work with, and help develop and attract small and local businesses to establish themselves, taxes and/or fees on vacant storefronts, buildings, and/or empty lots, a one-stop local business advocacy center to coordinate, facilitate, and expedite all those things: permitting, licensing, payment of taxes and fees, etc., streamlining of zoning, permitting, and licensing requirements, strengthening our revolving loan fund program, expanding by local preferences for the city, and exploring a legacy business type program for Berkeley. All of those things that I myself referred are either in progress or have been completed by our economic development department. So there's more to do, and I think we need to expand and continue expanding on the work that's already been done. But I want you to know that this was my focus from day one, and that we have actually changed our entire economic development focus from trying to get new targets and chain stores into our city to really meeting the needs of our small businesses. As for equity, we need to do outreach, we need to have seminars, we need to help people from start to finish to establish and run successful businesses in Berkeley from every background.
I think what we're seeing in Berkeley is the large driving out the small, and we need to focus on the small. We have small businesses are the vital backbone of our city, and we see we're losing our cultural institutions also to big developments, our theaters, the other places that we go downtown and in neighborhoods. I would like to see us have a planning process that talks about what are the businesses we want. When we did the North Berkeley planning process, and I asked Bart, what is your plan for the retail at North Berkeley, Bart? What kinds of stores are you going to have there? What will serve the residents of both the Bart Project and the neighborhood? They didn't have an answer to that. That's an absence of planning. If we want a future that we love, we've got to set the course for that future. I've noticed, particularly in the downtown, an absence of this kind of long-range planning. We did a really good job in the Adeline corridor, thinking about the needs of small businesses. But many of the business districts do not have that advantage. Also, the business bids are sometimes dominated more by property owners than businesses, and I want to thank the DBA for adding small businesses to their bid, because I think it changes the conversation to understand what a business owner needs and not a property owner who's probably out of town. In terms of inclusion and equity, I was very proud to co-sponsor what was known as Bendex, which is an attempt to ask the city when we contract that we look how we're doing at contracting with minority and women-owned businesses. When we contract, what we do typically is renew something with a big business that already existed that may not be local. We need to cut into that process and say, We want you, every time you do this, to give thought to who our dollars are going to, because we drive this business community. I myself own a business, and I'm a small business, woman-owned business in Alameda County, and that has made a lot of my work possible. So what we do as a government really matters in the business environment, and I think we really need to focus on this idea of Bendex and getting away from contracting. As they say in the business world, no one ever got fired by hiring IBM, because it's the easy decision. But we need to think small. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a lot of really great audience questions here. So I'm going to pivot and we're going to go to what the people want to hear. I've got 4 here. I hope to get through all of them. So Kate, this one will be yours first. How do you suggest bringing more transparency and accountability to the city's spending, especially in a time where citizens are questioning city spending and obligations?
I am really glad you asked that. I'm really glad you asked that question. I've served on the budget committee for 6 years, and I have to say, having worked in 36 cities and counties in California and around the world on budgeting, that I think we have one of the most untransparent budget processes I've ever seen. This is not on purpose, I don't think. I think it's a legacy system that leaves us often not knowing where money is being spent. For example, I was able to, just by looking at where there were extra salary savings in departments that did not fill all their slots, find $8 million a year to put into roads, into paving, without raising your taxes. I was able to find $2.5 million to support our waterfront without raising your taxes. In one tax measure, we did tax Uber and Lyft, and we did that so we can use the money for street safety. Because one of the biggest problems in Berkeley is who pays. Is it always going to be homeowners and tenants, who, by the way, do pay? Or are we going to look to other people like Uber and Lyft, who fund a lot of campaigns and a lot of activities? We're going to look to them and ask them to pay their fair share? Yes, we should. I am really actively involved in the entire way that we roll out our budget, from the way that the police were spending their overtime dollars, which has now been reformed, and I'm really grateful that has happened, to the entire area of how we spend money in various activities like the homelessness. What is cost effective in homelessness services? Is it as cost effective to have this center down on 2nd Street, or could we do something better? Is using hotels the right answer? This is actually my professional background as a professional consultant and budget analyst. This is what I work on in my day job, and I really am glad that we have started to move the needle, but we really need transparency. We need budgets that come forward with the city manager's requests and the council's requests at the same time, not saying, well, here's what we're going to bake in from the city manager, and council, here's your $3 to do what you think is important. We need budgets that really look at how leftover spending can be reallocated. And we need to take advantage of things like the Inflation Reduction Act from the federal government and really apply that to new ways of doing business, as I did with the Climate Equity Fund. This is an area that needs a strong mayor. It's one of our key charter responsibilities. Thank you very much.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Adina?
No, that's fine. Thank you. I appreciate it. So how many of you hear the word budget and your eyes kind of roll back? I know we're business people here, and so I think that's great, but I think there are a lot of people in the city of Berkeley who don't know what our budget looks like, don't know where to find it on the website, don't know how to read it. It's a million pages, you know, going through it takes a lot of time and energy. And as I've already stated, those who are not as engaged in our civics oftentimes can't because of work, because of their families, because of other responsibilities. And so I do think that we need to make that process simpler and easier for people to connect with. I think that you should be able to go on the city's website and, for instance, very easily see, oh, these are the different sources of funding, and this is where the funding goes, in some kind of something that depicts a picture or something that makes it easier for people to understand. I think that we're a city of folks who are highly, highly educated, you know, with undergrad degrees, with graduate school degrees, and not everybody has that, first of all. And second of all, not everybody who has that knows about budgets. So I think we need to make things clearer and easier, more spelled out. I think also we can be connecting with business leaders to make sure they understand what's happening in the budget. And I'm glad that you brought up this point about transparency and accountability because, in general, I think that this is something that the city of Berkeley can do better. I think that we oftentimes have these really grand plans. I love that the city of Berkeley likes to be leaders in things. And also, we spend so much money and time and energy and volunteer time from our commissions to make these great plans. And then oftentimes they sit on the shelves and we don't know what's going on with them. And we're lucky that we have a city auditor who kind of tells us what's happening with these plans. And we're lucky that some folks are able to come to city council meetings to hear about updates. But we need to do better just generally on transparency and accountability in the city. Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Nope, I got it.
Wonderful.
So first of all, I just want to say that I'm glad that Councilmember Harrison enjoys the committee system so much because it's a system that I initiated and helped design and deploy in my role on the Agenda and Rules Committee. And on that committee, I am constantly working to improve our processes and systems in this and many other ways. It's incredible to sit on the Budget Committee for all these years and not to have improved that transparency. Because I agree with Councilmember Harrison that our transparency is lacking and that the ways that the city manager presents her budget need to be significantly improved. But you're in the position to improve it, and that hasn't been done. And so what we need is a mayor who will actually do those things. And I think anybody here knows that when I see a problem that Berkeley has, I step in to solve it. And that is why the work of the Agenda and Rules Committee has been robust, because the issues with our legislative process have been something that I have been concerned about and I have been addressing through that role, and that's what that role is for. So, what can we do to improve transparency? We need to tell the city manager, we need to tell her as a city council, the format in which we expect our budget to be presented. We don't just complain about it. We can just tell her, here's how you do it. We also need to do what so many communities are doing already, which is go on a road show, go out to community groups, go to churches, go out and share information and present information to the community about what we're doing with their money or what we propose to do. We also have a terrible website in terms of access to information about our budget. Nobody can figure it out. Most of the information, if it's there at all, is in a document that's 1,000 pages long and people have to dig for it. So we need to do a lot more around transparency, and I look forward to doing it as your next mayor.
Okay, Adina, this will be yours first. Given the recent challenges with public input at council meetings, what do you think should be done differently and why?
Great question. I think that, first of all, there are a lot of folks that are still very unhappy with the way that the city council is responding to protesters coming to the city council meetings. And in my opinion, we need to give them an opportunity to meet with folks. I know that this is controversial, but I really think that there needs to be a forum held specifically about this issue so that the community can come together. This has caused a huge rift in our community, and for me personally, I find it very challenging. I'm someone who grew up in a very Jewish neighborhood. My name is Adina, which is actually a Hebrew name. My parents didn't know that when they named me that. But I've also connected very much with the Arab community here and the Muslim community and Palestinians. And I think it's important that we are listening to folks and allowing us as a community to come together to have a conversation. So I would personally be very interested in seeing a forum where folks come together. I think that League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan political organization, as I mentioned earlier, would be a perfect organization to host something like this, to bring people to have conversations across differences. And as long as we have people who are trained facilitators who are able to bring people together, I think that we can really work to solve the rift that's happening in our community. Thank you.
Sophie, over to you.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I don't mind listening to the community. I actually welcome it. I'm happy to hear from people. I'm happy to hear from them when they're happy, and I'm happy to hear from them when they're frustrated and upset. It's not a burden to me. So I don't really consider it to be a challenge that people are coming and speaking with us. So that having been said, there is a particular perspective that has been very vigorously forwarded at our council meetings lately. And we have gone out of our way to extend the amount of time that is available for people to speak. For example, traditionally, we only have 10 slots for comment on non-agenda items because this is to talk about something not on our agenda. And we have been extending that at every single meeting to 20. We also take additional public comment at the end of meetings. We also have allowed people to essentially bend our rules extensively by making public comment on non-agenda items during agenda items. So people will stand up and they will talk about a little bit about something on the agenda, and they'll shift over and talk about something else. So I think we have actually gone out of our way to listen to people. And I think that's what we should be doing. And I don't mind it at all. I'm happy to listen to people all night long if that's what it takes for people to express themselves to our council. So I'm not sure the challenges. This is a democracy. And so so hearing people is an important part of our jobs that I am happy to be part of. Now we also have to transact business. We are also there to do the people's business. And when the folks who are there speaking to us refuse to stop yelling and refuse to sit down and allow us to do our business, we have to find ways to do that business. So we can do both. We can hear people and we can get business done, which is what we were elected to do. Thank you.
Kate, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, but thank you. Thank you very much, Beth. I agree with Adina on this question. I think there needs to be a community conversation, and I will say frankly that in October I did join the call for a ceasefire. But I don't think our council meetings are the best place to discuss that. I think it's a very imprecise forum. People will not have enough time to really have their feelings laid out. And some of the actions have been very hurtful from both sides in terms of people yelling at each other, yelling at council people, et cetera. It has been a very stressful, difficult situation, and I'm not going to gainsay that. However, what has the Agenda and Rules Committee that Councilmember Hahn sits on done about this? Last week, 2 weeks ago, they decided to put forward a measure that would have moved the meetings to 10 a.m. And while, in fact, the description from the city manager did not say that, the Agenda Committee did not demand a report from the city manager saying, what is this item really about? It said, we're going to move the April 29th meeting to April 2nd or something of that nature. No indication of a chance of a suggestion that all meetings be moved to 10 a.m. Very bad for working people altogether. This is one of the things I find very broken. And when we finally got the report and it included that suggestion, the description, the small thing most people go to on the agenda, still did not say that at 9 o'clock the night before the meeting. It was at 10 a.m. of the day of the meeting that it was suddenly clear from this pocket description that we were talking about moving meetings to 10 a.m. when most working people, most of you, cannot come. It will not keep protesters from coming. It is simply a way of cutting down on public conversation. That came through our Agenda and Rules Committee. In addition, we have many items now going on consent where people are voting to abstain. That's a very unusual thing to do. If you want to vote no, you should have it on action and vote no. This is another way of people avoiding discussing what they really believe. So this is one of the reasons why I resigned. I feel our process is broken, untransparent, and a lot of this comes through the Agenda Committee. I also just want to say I've not just complained about the budget. I have found millions and millions of dollars to pay for vital public services. Thank you very much.
Okay, this is going to be our last question of the evening, and then we'll do our closing statements. Sophie, this question's for you first. What is one key reform you think needs to be made in reference to the city's finances? How will you propose to increase the city's revenue stream?
Thank you for that question. I just first need to say that Councilmember Harrison has actively misrepresented what happened at the Agenda and Rules Committee on this. There was a bait and switch done by the city manager, but there was no way for the Agenda and Rules Committee to know that was going to happen. So I just have to correct the record on that, and I think it's pretty reprehensible to be making a suggestion like that. So getting to the question of the city's finances, I think that the most important thing for us to do is to diversify the sources of funds. We're all patting ourselves on the back because we came through the pandemic relatively well as compared to other cities. But that is actually because we have a almost exclusive single source of revenues for our city, which is property taxes. When you have a city like San Francisco, they get more of their money from business license taxes and from hospitality and tourism and things like that. They experienced a downturn. But guess what? The biggest risks in Berkeley, earthquakes and fires, can wipe out billions of dollars worth of real estate in a single day. And when that day comes, one or the other or both, because we know that both are likely scenarios, we are going to be in big trouble. And so this goes straight to the business community. We need to increase business activity in the city of Berkeley so that we can diversify the sources of funds. We need to increase tourism. We need to expand our ability to house not just storefront businesses, but other kinds of businesses, startups. We have a growing biotech sector in West Berkeley. All of this is important. Diversity is strength, not just in our community, but in our budget. And we have a sole source budget in Berkeley. It's our greatest weakness.
Kate, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, but thank you very much. I think one of the main things we need to diversify, and this is not going to be popular in this group, and I'm speaking to the Berkeley community, is to stop allowing people to take properties off our tax roll. We know that UC master leases apartment buildings in Berkeley, and when they do that, those buildings no longer pay taxes. This is a practice that we had pledged to stop, and we need to stop it now, not in some distant future. We also have businesses that are using our hotels, and we need to have a solution to homelessness. But when they do that, when they take the Quality Inn on University and use it for homeless services, we're losing that revenue source. What we see is an increasing reliance on permanent long-term residents to support a growing population in Berkeley. Does this mean I don't want more students? No, it doesn't. What it means is I want UC to pay their fair share, and I do not believe they are doing that at this moment. I think we also have discounted fees that are reasonable because we've done studies of the connection between the amount of profit that a developer will earn and the amount that they can pay in affordable housing fees. That was discounted last year in an 8-to-1 vote. Disregarding a study by Bay Area Economics, I voted against it, by the way, Bay Area Economics, that showed that these fees that we had in place were both reasonable and necessary to provide the kind of affordable housing that we need for our community. How many of you have children that simply cannot live here anymore? Are these units that we're producing, many of which are vacant, why we have the vacancy tax, many of which are vacant, are these units really serving your families? And even are they serving students who are paying an enormous amount in rent? So I think it's wrong to say that we need to do more, we need to spend more as a city. I think we need to ask people to pay their fair share. And I'm not going to step back from that point of view. It's how I feel that we have gotten into the trouble we have. Having said that, one thing about Berkeley is we do have a really strong revenue base, and it's not really true that it's single source. We have a lot of sources of revenue, and I'm really proud of us for having done that. But this is not a popular answer in this group, but that is what I honestly believe. Us taxpayers are paying for more and more of the bill for other people. Thank you.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, can you repeat the question, please?
You got it, Adina. Final question. What is one key reform you think needs to be made in reference to the city's finances? How will you propose to increase the city's revenue stream?
One key reform. I'm going to go with this is the business group, so let's talk about something business related. I mentioned earlier that there are 3 things I really want to accomplish in the terms of businesses. One is create a more local business friendly environment. That means mental health, looking at increasing the hours of the specialized care unit, helping to support our homeless folks. I think that, there's a misconception that people who live on the streets all want to live on the streets, and that's really not the truth. And it doesn't matter to me if you want homeless folks that are unhoused to have access to housing for compassionate reasons, or if you don't want it because you don't want to see them. In my mind, we want the same thing. We want there to be successful housing for folks that are unhoused and for them to get the right support so that they can stay housed. Clean streets, that's a thing that we've talked about a little bit, but the Downtown Berkeley Business Association has worked with the Downtown Streets team to provide support in cleaning our streets. I think that's great. Removing bureaucratic obstacles, as we've talked about, permits, business licenses, zoning changes. I would really like to see more nightlife in Berkeley. There's a huge opportunity here for nightlife. Everything closes at 9 o'clock, or at least that's what it feels like. We're a college town. I'm shocked that we don't have more to do. And also there needs to be things for those of us who are no longer in college to still go out at night. So that's important. Public safety, we haven't gotten a chance to talk about it, but lights make people feel more safe. Lights will allow more people to be out at night for all of the nightlife that we're going to increase. Cameras, I know we've talked about this. This is a controversial topic. I'm very curious to see how successful they are. They do cost a lot of money, and I have some concerns about that. And also, I recognize we're in a time where folks are feeling unsafe, and I think it's worth giving it a shot to see if it works. Safe streets we've talked about. These are all things that I think we could be looking at when we're talking about increasing the revenue. We can increase the revenue by supporting our businesses here.
Well, thank you all so much. There's so much we didn't get to cover, so I look forward to doing this again as we get closer to the election. We're going to do closing statements now. We're going to start off with Kate, then Adina, and then Sophie. You each have 2 minutes. Kate?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Effective management for our next set of challenges doesn't just happen. It requires hard work, a commitment to advancing policies, and the experience to know how to deliver real results. I have done all that as a city council member, and I will do that as your next mayor. I'm the only candidate in this race with significant management experience. I managed a $1 billion budget for the California court systems and oversaw 70 staff in a policy operation for the justice system. I served as chair of San Francisco's Capital Improvement Committee and as finance manager for the Waterfront Project, which brought us the beautiful new Embarcadero, you remember, after the bridge fell down. And I've done these things, and I have this strong management background, but I also have a set of things I want to accomplish beyond just managing the city well. It's yes and. In addition to managing the city well, we have to build a city that embraces the future, enshrines equity, and protects the planet. I led the way to transition Berkeley customers to 100% greenhouse gas renewable energy. I established the $1.5 million Just Transition Fund for climate equity, helping low-income residents join the green future. I set up EV fast charges for residents without access at home because they live in apartment buildings and don't have parking. I am proud to be endorsed by over 150 elected officials and community leaders who share my passion for Berkeley, a Berkeley that embraces its past, does not forget its past, but also moves into a better future. I look forward to your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me this evening. I really appreciate your questions and the opportunity to learn from all of you in the form of your questions, and I look forward to speaking with you afterwards. I really want to highlight what I think I bring to the table, which is personal life experience. As I mentioned, I'm someone who's experienced housing insecurity, food insecurity, and struggled to make Berkeley a safe home for myself. I'm someone who's been mugged just a block from my house, and this is something that really has given me a lot of insight into how individuals deal with these issues. I think that one of the reasons why I got involved in this race is because I think we have a lot of folks who have policy background, and that's super important, but many folks don't have personal experiences with how those policies actually impact people on an individual level. And I think that's a very important perspective that we need to have. Of course, I also have a policy background, having been involved with League of Women Voters for 13 years, having served as one of the presidents, the first woman of color in 107 years, and being involved with measures like O and P. O was an affordable housing bond, P was a transfer tax for homeless services, and I was a co-signer on both of those. So I have led our city on significant pieces of work that have helped to support our city. I think that I want to also highlight that you can count on me to be someone who listens to all of you. I come from a background where it's important to listen to all sides of an issue before making a decision and moving forward. And a lot of my work has been about bringing people together across differences. And I think that's essential for our city. I see us in kind of an existential crisis. We're at this time where there's a lot of tension. I think that the pandemic was a huge part of that. I think it drove people apart. And we need more opportunities to create a community and come together and be stronger together. This is my message to you all, that I see that we need a leader who's going to bring people together, be able to treat folks with respect and listen to folks. And that is what I bring to the table. I thank you so much for your time. And if you're interested in learning more about me, you can go to adinaishi.com. And I look forward to speaking with you all more. Thank you.
Well, I'm always excited to hear that people are happy with Measures O and P, which the mayor and I wrote together and shared the campaign to pass them. And thank you for signing the ballot measure. That was very much appreciated. I'm deeply grateful to Beth and the Berkeley Chamber and everyone who sponsored this event. Thank you for providing us with such a generous forum. The Berkeley I believe in invests in the conditions for people and organizations to thrive. Cities across the globe create plazas, parks, and boulevards that invite strolling, shopping, and social connections. Knocking on doors in Berkeley's neighborhoods, I hear people yearning for more community, and they mourn the loss of movie theaters and shops. Let's bring forward a Berkeley where every district buzzes with new businesses, where parks and plazas are alive with laughter, and where everyone feels connected. This is the future I want to create with you. I know that when we work together, we can do great things for Berkeley. We proved that during the pandemic, when we came together like never before. Let's harness that spirit to improve life for everyone and champion our local businesses, not just in words, but with our actions. For my entire life, I have been devoted to Berkeley and to serving the community and the values that I was steeped in. From my earliest days at Berkeley High, advocating to integrate clubs and activities through leadership on the PTA, the Library Foundation, and Planned Parenthood, to chairing the Commission on the Status of Women and approving more than 1,000 new homes on the zoning board, and now, as a council member, still on the council for almost 8 years, I have always worked my heart out for Berkeley. I have been here with you for a lifetime, and you can count on me to continue leading our city with dedication, passion, and an unwavering belief in all that we can achieve together. I hope you'll join me.
Thank you so much. Let's give one more round of applause to all three candidates.